The first thing you notice is not the light, but the cold. It's a damp, penetrating chill that seems to rise from the very stone beneath you, seeping through the thin layer of straw and into your bones. Morning has not so much arrived as it has reluctantly seeped into the darkness, a weak, gray watercolor wash against the high, barred window. The air is thick, heavy with the scent of unwashed bodies, stale sweat, and the quiet, metallic tang of fear. You can hear the soft rustle of others stirring around you, a chorus of coughs and low groans that serves as this world's peculiar alarm clock. You are a collection of sleeping assets, and the business day is about to begin. There is no birdsong here, only the slow, rhythmic drip of water somewhere in the shadows and the sound of your own breathing, a small, fragile puff of steam in the frigid air. Tied to your wrist is a small wooden tag, its edges smoothed by the hands of many previous appraisers. The cord is rough against your skin, a constant scratching reminder of your status. This little piece of wood is your entire resume, your product description, and your warranty card, all rolled into one. It doesn't list your hopes or the names of people you once knew. Instead, it details your age, your supposed origin, and notes any particular skills, much like the feature list on a new piece of technology. And on the back, in finely scratched letters, is the fine print. This is the guarantee, the return policy, for the discerning buyer. It assures them that you are free from hidden defects, epilepsy, a persistent cough, or, most importantly, a demonstrated and inconvenient desire for freedom. You are not a person, not yet. You are an investment, and the market abhors a faulty product. The heavy wooden door groans open, a sound like a dying beast, and a harsh, brighter gray light floods the space, making you squint. It's time. You are prodded to your feet, your muscles stiff and aching from the cold floor, and herded out into the narrow, muddy lane. The city is awake now, and it assaults your senses with an indifferent brutality. The air smells of wood smoke, baking bread, and the open sewer trench that runs down the middle of the street. The noise is a cacophony of shouting merchants, the rumble of cartwheels on cobblestone, and the distant, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer. People push past you, their faces impassive. They give you the same brief, evaluative glance they might give a mule or a sack of grain, a quick calculation of worth before moving on. You are just another piece of the city's noisy, dirty, vibrant machinery, a temporary obstruction in the flow of daily commerce. You are led into the main square, the heart of the market. Here, the noise and the smells intensify into a thick, almost tangible soup. Stalls are piled high with glistening fish, pyramids of strange-smelling spices, and bolts of brightly colored cloth. The shouts of vendors hawking their wares blend into a constant, meaningless roar. But you are guided past all of this, toward a raised wooden platform at the center of the square. This is the stage. This is the showroom floor. The air here is different, charged with a unique tension. It smells of sawdust, nervous sweat, and the faint, sweet perfume worn by the wealthy patrons who have come to browse. You are lined up with the others, a silent, waiting display of human potential, each of you a solution to someone else's problem. A field that needs plowing, a kitchen that needs tending, a lonely bed that needs warming. The sun, having finally burned through the morning mist, now beats down upon the platform. It's a weak, watery sun, but it's enough to make you aware of the grime on your skin and the dust in the air. Time begins to stretch, to warp. You stand, and you wait. This is the long, slow part of the process, the part where you become part of the scenery. Flies, drawn by the heat and the scent of humanity, buzz lazily around your head. You watch the buyers as they drift past. They don't hurry. They examine you with the cool, detached gaze of a connoisseur. They walk around you, murmuring to each other in low tones. They are looking for good posture, clear eyes, unblemished skin. They are reading the tags, comparing prices and features, perhaps wondering if they should wait for the next shipment to arrive. If this slow, methodical immersion in the past is something you truly appreciate, feel free to leave a like, but only if you mean it. Then comes the appraisal. A man with ink-stained fingers and a perpetually bored expression moves down the line. He is not the buyer. He is the quality control inspector. He grabs your chin, his grip firm and impersonal, and forces your mouth open. He peers inside, counting your teeth, checking for decay. A full set of sound teeth is a major selling point, a sign of youth and good health, far more valuable than any story you could tell. He runs his hands down your arms and legs, feeling the muscle. He turns you around, his eyes scanning your back for the telltale latticework of scars from a whip. Too many scars suggest a rebellious nature, a product that has already been returned once or twice. He makes a small notation on your tag, a little checkmark of approval, and moves on. The entire process is chillingly silent and efficient, a bureaucratic ritual of human commodification. As the afternoon wears on, the auctioneer takes the stage. He is not a loud, aggressive man. His voice is a smooth, practiced drone, a lulling, persuasive hum that carries over the noise of the market. He speaks of you not as a person, but as a collection of virtues. Strong back, good for the fields or the quarry, he might intone, his voice rising and falling in a hypnotic rhythm. Guaranteed for 1 full year against flight and the falling sickness. Look at those hands, perfect for weaving or delicate work. He is a master of the soft sell, turning your existence into a list of benefits for the prospective owner. You listen to the sound of your life being marketed, the bids coming as quiet murmurs or subtle hand gestures from the crowd. It's less like an auction and more like a silent, deeply serious board meeting where you are the sole topic on the agenda. The sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, colors far too beautiful for a day like this. The crowd thins. Some of your platform mates are gone, led away by their new owners to fates you can only imagine. The air grows cooler, and a deep weariness settles over you, a fatigue that is more than just physical. The vendors of spices and fish and cloth begin to pack up their stalls, their chatter now softer, more tired. The business day is ending. You are still standing on the platform, an unsold item, your price perhaps a little too high, or maybe a newer model simply caught the buyer's eyes. The auctioneer gives you a final indifferent glance before stepping down, his work done for the day. Perhaps you can comment with the exact time you finally drifted off to sleep, letting the sounds of this forgotten world fade into your dreams. Night falls not with a sudden blanket of darkness, but as a slow, creeping tide of deep blue and shadow. The last of the buyers have gone home to their warm dinners and soft beds. The market square is nearly empty now, a ghost of its daytime self, littered with discarded vegetables and the debris of commerce. The air is cool and carries the scent of rain on the horizon. A guard comes to lead you and the other remaining inventory off the platform. The question hangs in the silent, heavy air. Where are you going now? Back to the cold, damp stone of the holding pen, to wait for the morning and another day of being a product on a shelf? Or are you being led down a different, unknown street, sold in a quiet, end-of-day bargain to a master you never even saw? The uncertainty is its own kind of prison, a quiet, humming dread that follows you into the growing darkness. Perhaps your new life does not begin in a home, but deep within the groaning belly of the earth. You are a miner now. Your day starts in a darkness so complete it feels like a physical substance, a thick, cold oil poured into your eyes and ears. You are woken not by the sun, which you will not see for many hours, but by a harsh shout and the kick of a boot against the wooden bunk. The air in the barracks is a foul cocktail of sweat, damp wool, and the ever-present metallic scent of coal dust that has settled into the very grain of the wood. There is no breakfast, only a lump of hard gray bread, and a cup of tepid, brackish water that you drink, while pulling on clothes that never truly dry. The fabric is stiff with yesterday's grime and sweat, a second skin of filth that you wear into the earth's cold embrace. You shuffle with the others toward the mouth of the mine, a black, gaping wound in the side of the hill. A cold mist clings to the ground, and your breath plumes in the frigid air. The only light comes from the flickering, sputtering oil lamps, casting long, dancing shadows that make the line of men look like a procession of ghosts marching willingly into the underworld. At the entrance, you are handed your tools, a heavy, crudely forged pickaxe, and a small, shallow basket. This is your entire world for the next 12 hours. The descent is a slow, claustrophobic journey down a rickety wooden ladder into a darkness that seems to swallow the lamplight. The air changes immediately, growing thick, wet, and starved of life. It smells of damp stone, of minerals, and of something else, the faint, ever-present odor of human despair. Your workspace is a tunnel no taller than a seated man, a cramped, horizontal grave where you will spend your waking hours. You find a spot on the coal seam, the lamplight painting a small, trembling circle on the glistening black rock. Then the work begins. You raise the pickaxe, your muscles screaming in protest from the cramped position. The swing is short, awkward, a choked arc of motion in the tight space. The impact sends a jarring shock up your arms and into your shoulders. Nakushtiyathi. A spray of sharp coal fragments peppers your face. You swing again. Thud. And again. The sound is the only rhythm down here. A dull, percussive heartbeat of endless labor, echoed by the dozens of other men, hidden in the darkness around you, each chipping away at their own small piece of the world. The dust is a constant companion. It is not like the dust of the world above. This is a fine, greasy powder that clogs your throat, coats your tongue, and works its way deep into your lungs. You cough, and the sound is a dry, rattling bark in the oppressive silence between swings. You spit, and it comes out black. You learn to breathe shallowly, to conserve the thin, stale air. The only safety inspection is a small, chirping canary in a cage near the main shaft, its cheerful song, a fragile barometer for the poison that can fill these tunnels without warning. If the singing stops, you run. It's a beautifully simple and utterly terrifying piece of organic technology. You are, in a way, less valuable than the bird. It is a warning system. You are just the labor. Hours bleed into one another, marked only by the slow burning down of the oil in your lamp. There is no day, no night, only the swing, the impact, the gathering of coal into the basket, and the dragging of the full basket back to the main shaft. Your body becomes a machine of aches. A deep, grinding pain settles in your lower back. Your shoulders burn with a fire that never goes out. Your knuckles are scraped raw against the rock. You see the man in the tunnel next to you, a gray-haired veteran of this underworld. His breath is a constant, wet rattle. He pauses, his body racked by a deep, hollow cough that seems to tear something loose inside him. He spits a dark, thick substance onto the ground, wipes his mouth with the back of a black hand, and raises his pickaxe again. His entire life has been a slow, methodical act of burying himself from the inside out. The midday break is a brief, almost insulting pause in the labor. You are not brought to the surface. You simply stop swinging. You sit in the suffocating darkness, your back pressed against the cold, damp rock. You gnaw on another piece of the same gray bread, its texture like sawdust in your dry mouth. You wash it down with more of the foul water from your flask. The darkness is so complete that if you close your eyes, there is no difference. You can hear the groans of the other men, the drip of water from the ceiling, and the quiet, insidious creaking of the wooden supports that are the only thing standing between you and tons of indifferent rock. It is a peace so profound it borders on the terrifying, a reminder that you are a mile from the sun, buried alive by choice. Then a shout echoes down the tunnels, and the break is over. You pick up your tool, the handle now slick with the sweat from your hands. The rhythm begins again. The swing, the thud, the scrape of the shovel. Your mind goes numb, a self-preservation reflex against the soul-crushing monotony. You think of nothing. You are only the ache in your back, the burn in your lungs, the jarring impact in your arms. You are a component, a biological machine, designed for the singular purpose of striking rock. The fine print on your long-forgotten sales tag never mentioned this, the slow erasure of self, the hollowing out of a person, until only the physical shell and the capacity for labor remain. You are an asset, and the mine is simply where you are being spent. Finally, after an eternity, the signal comes to ascend. You crawl back to the main shaft, your body a symphony of pain. The climb up the ladder is agonizing, your muscles trembling with exhaustion. As you near the surface, you see it, a pale gray square of light. It grows, and the air begins to thin, to smell of trees and rain. You emerge from the mouth of the mine, blinking like a newborn creature into the evening twilight. The world seems impossibly bright, impossibly vast, The air is so fresh and clean it feels like drinking from a cool spring. But you are a creature of the dark now. The light hurts your eyes. The open space feels unnerving. You and the other men do not speak. You are specters of coal dust and exhaustion, shuffling back to the barracks to collapse onto your bunk, to sleep a dead, dreamless sleep, until the kick of a boot wakes you again in the pre-dawn blackness. And you will descend once more. Or perhaps your fate was not the deep earth, but a room filled with a thunderous, mechanical roar. You are a spinner now, a tender of the great, clattering looms that weave cloth day and night. The factory is a vast brick cathedral, dedicated to the god of textile production, and its hymn is a deafening, ceaseless racket that vibrates through the wooden floor, up your legs, and into the base of your skull. From the moment you step inside, the sound consumes you. It is impossible to speak, impossible to think. You communicate through a series of sharp hand gestures and nods. The air is thick and heavy, saturated with tiny cotton fibers that float like a permanent hazy fog. You breathe it in with every gasp, a sweet, cloying dust that coats your throat and lines your lungs. Your job requires a strange, nimble grace. You stand for 12 hours, watching 100 threads being spun and woven by the relentless, chattering machine. Your eyes scan the vast web, looking for the inevitable. A thread snaps. Instantly, your hands must dart into the blur of moving parts, a dangerous ballet between shuttles and heddles. You must find the two broken ends, tie them together in a tiny, perfect knot, and pull your hands away before the machinery can catch a finger, a hand, a life. The speed required is unnatural. There is no time for hesitation. A moment's delay can cause a flaw in the fabric, a flaw that will be deducted from your meager wages. A moment's clumsiness can leave you maimed, your value as a worker instantly reduced to zero. You see the evidence of this danger everywhere. The woman working the loom next to you has only 3 fingers on her right hand. She is faster than anyone, her movements born of a hard-won, painful lesson. An older girl, no more than 15, has a long, pale scar running down her forearm, where the machine once grabbed her sleeve and tried to pull her in. They are the veterans, the survivors of a quiet, daily war against the machine. They move with a tense, practiced efficiency, their faces blank, their eyes never straying from the threads. They are a part of the loom, another moving component, their flesh and blood integrated into the mechanical process of production. You are learning to become like them, to empty your mind and let your body become an extension of the factory's will. The overseer stalks the aisles between the looms, a hawk-eyed predator in this mechanical forest. He carries a long, thin rod, not as a weapon, but as a pointer, a tool of intimidation. He taps it against the frame of a loom if he sees a mistake. He raps it sharply against your shoulder if you are not moving fast enough. His presence is a constant, low-level hum of anxiety beneath the overwhelming roar of the machinery. He is the human embodiment of the factory's demand for perfection, for speed, for a pace that pushes you past exhaustion and into a state of numb, aching automation. His approval is silence. His disapproval is a sharp rap and a glare that promises consequences. The heat is oppressive. The friction of the machines and the press of so many bodies in the enclosed space creates a sweltering, humid environment, even in winter. Sweat trickles down your temples and the small of your back, gluing your thin shift to your skin. The cotton dust sticks to you, creating a grimy paste. You long for a breath of fresh air, for a moment of silence, but there are no such luxuries here. The break is a scant 15 minutes, a frantic scramble to a corner of the yard to eat a piece of bread and some cheese, the thunder of the factory still ringing in your ears. The sudden quiet of the outside world is jarring, a physical pressure against your eardrums. Then you are herded back inside, back into the noise, the heat, and the haze. As the day ends, a bell rings, a sound that barely cuts through the din. The machines shudder to a halt, one by one. The silence that follows is not peaceful. It is a hollow, ringing void, filled with the ghost of the noise that was there moments before. Your ears hum. Your body still vibrates with the memory of the floor. You stumble out into the evening, your limbs stiff, your back a single, solid knot of pain. You are covered in a fine layer of white dust, making you look like a flour-dusted doll. You walk back to a crowded tenement, where you will fall onto a straw mattress and sleep, your dreams filled with the phantom clatter of the looms and the endless dance of snapping threads. And tomorrow the great machine will call for you again. But maybe you were destined for a different kind of heat, the dry, baking inferno of the ovens. You are a baker's assistant, and your day begins when others' dreams are at their deepest. You wake in the blackest part of the night, guided by the distant glow of the bakehouse fire. The city is asleep, silent save for the scuttling of rats in the alleyways. You push open the heavy wooden door and are hit by a wall of warmth and the rich, yeasty smell of rising dough. The air inside is thick, almost solid, a mixture of flour dust, wood smoke, and sweat. The master baker, a mountain of a man with flour in his eyebrows and forearms like knotted oak, is already at work, a silent, focused giant in the flickering firelight. Your first task is to mix the dough in massive wooden troughs, large enough to bathe in. You haul sacks of flour that seem to weigh as much as you do, your muscles straining, and dump them into the trough. You add the water, the yeast, the salt. Then you plunge your arms in up to the elbows. The dough is a living thing, a cool, sticky, and surprisingly heavy mass. You begin to knead. This is not the gentle kneading of a home kitchen. This is a battle. You push, fold, and turn the dough with your entire body weight, your shoulders and back screaming in protest. The rhythm is relentless. Push, fold, turn. Push, fold, turn. For hours. The master baker works beside you, his movements economical and powerful, a lifetime of this labor etched into his muscles. The flour is everywhere. It rises in clouds, settling on your hair, your clothes, your eyelashes. You breathe it in until your throat is permanently dry and raspy. It works its way into the cracks of your skin, leaving your hands perpetually pale and chapped. After hours of kneading, when the dough is finally smooth and elastic, the shaping begins. You cut and weigh the dough, your hands moving with a speed born of endless repetition, forming the loaves, the rolls, the buns that will feed the city. Your fingers know the feel of the perfect weight, the right tension in the shaped loaf. It is a skill that exists purely in your hands, your mind having long since checked out, floating in a sea of exhaustion. Then comes the ordeal of the oven. It is a great, brick beast, with a mouth that roars with heat. Opening the iron door is like staring into the sun. A wave of scorching air blasts your face, crisping your eyebrows and drying the sweat on your skin instantly. Using a long wooden peel, you slide the loaves into the fiery depths, your movements swift and precise to avoid being burned. The skin on your arms is a roadmap of old scars and fresh pink burns from moments of carelessness. You watch the master baker, his face ruddy and perpetually flushed from a lifetime spent in this heat, as he judges the bread not by time but by color, by sound, by a sixth sense that you have yet to develop. He is the high priest of this temple of heat and gluten. Your meals are a cruel irony. You are surrounded by the most wonderful smells, by mountains of fresh, warm bread. But you are not allowed to touch it. That is, for the customers. For the paying world. Your food is the day-old bread. The loaves that didn't sell. The ones that are hard and stale. You chew on the dry crusts. The glorious smell of the fresh bread, a form of gentle torture. You drink water from a bucket, the coolness, a brief, heavenly respite from the furnace-like heat of the room. You watch the city wake up through the open door, people starting their day, just as yours is nearing its grueling end. You have been toiling in the heat for 8 hours before the first church bell even rings. When the last batch is pulled from the oven and the bakehouse is filled with the sublime aroma of perfectly cooked bread, your work is still not done. You must clean the troughs, scrub the floors, and prepare for the next night's labor. You finally stumble out of the bakehouse into the full light of morning, your body aching, your skin tight from the heat, smelling of smoke and flour. The daylight feels strange, the air impossibly cool. You are a creature of the night, a sweaty ghost of the bakery. You trudge back to your small room to sleep through the heat of the day, knowing that in just a few short hours, in the deep, quiet darkness, the great troughs and the fiery mouth of the oven will be waiting for you, and the dough will demand your strength again. The warranty that came with you, the one scribbled on the back of your wooden tag, has long since expired. It was a guarantee against internal flaws, against the failures of the spirit. It said nothing about the slow, methodical dismantling of the body by the world itself. Here, in the churn of daily life, there is no return policy for a worn-out part. The fine print is not written in ink, but in the accumulation of scars, in the rasp of a cough that never leaves, in the tremor of a hand that once was steady. Danger is not a sudden event. It is the very air you breathe, the food you eat, the work that earns your keep. It is a constant, low-grade poison, administered in 1,000 tiny daily doses, and the only question is which dose will be the final one. You are no longer a product waiting to be sold. You are a resource being consumed. Imagine you were one of the lucky ones, sold not to a mine or a field, but to a factory that makes something as small and simple as a matchstick. It seems like a clean, delicate job. You spend your days in a long, dusty room, dipping thin splints of wood into a pale, waxy paste of white phosphorus. The work is repetitive, almost calming. At night, you notice something curious. If you smile in the dark, your teeth give off a faint, ghostly glow. It's a strange, amusing party trick. But then, a tooth begins to ache. A dull, persistent throb that grows into a fire in your jaw. The gum around the tooth swells, turning a purplish gray. The sweet, garlicky smell of the phosphorus paste seems to cling to your breath, to your skin. Soon, the bone itself begins to decay, the rot slowly, inexorably eating away at your jaw from the inside out, a condition the doctors, with a chilling lack of imagination, call phossy jaw. Your face becomes a swollen, foul-smelling ruin, and you are left to glow, quite literally, with the fruits of your labor. Or perhaps you found yourself in a potter's workshop, a place of quiet, dusty artistry. Your job is to apply the glaze, a fine, sugary powder mixed with water, to the clay pots before they are fired. You spend your days with your hands submerged in the milky liquid, your fingers tracing delicate patterns. The glaze has a strangely sweet taste, and you find yourself licking a stray drop from your fingers without thinking. Weeks turn into months. You begin to suffer from a deep, twisting pain in your gut, a colic that leaves you doubled over and gasping. Your joints ache, and a strange metallic taste fills your mouth. A thin blue-black line appears along your gums, a grim border drawn by an invisible hand. Your own hands, once so steady, begin to tremble, a fine, uncontrollable palsy that makes the delicate work impossible. You have been poisoned by the lead in the sweet-tasting glaze, your body slowly, systematically undone by the very beauty you were helping to create. The price of a beautiful cup, it turns out, is the slow shattering of the person who made it. The dangers are not confined to the workshop. They sit on your plate disguised as nourishment. You stop at a butcher's stall, drawn by the sight of a robust red piece of beef, but the air around it has a faint, cloying sweetness that doesn't belong. The butcher, a man with a smile as greasy as his apron, has his secrets. He knows how to rub old blood onto a cut of meat that is a day or two past its prime, restoring a false blush of life. He knows that a careful application of saltpeter can keep a piece of pork looking pink and healthy long after it has begun its slow journey into decay. You buy the meat, you cook it, and you eat it. And that night you are seized by cramps and a violent sickness, your body desperately trying to expel the lie you consumed. The phrase farm to table is a concept that has not yet been invented, and if it were, it would describe a much shorter and far more hazardous journey. Even the simplest of foods, the very staff of life, carries its own secret betrayals. You buy a loaf of bread, admiring its brilliant white color, a sign of purity and quality. But when you bite into it, there is a faint, gritty texture, an almost imperceptible harshness on the tongue. That brilliant whiteness is not the result of finely milled flour. It is an illusion, crafted from cheaper, heavier things. The baker, under pressure to produce more for less, has mixed in chalk dust or ground alum, or even plaster of Paris to stretch his flour and whiten his product. You are, in essence, eating your bread and a small piece of a wall at the same time. It fills your stomach, but it nourishes nothing. It is a slow, methodical theft of nutrition, a fraud perpetrated against the most basic needs of your body. You are simply getting your daily required minerals in the most literal and unhelpful way imaginable. You buy milk from a woman carrying 2 heavy pails on a yoke across her shoulders. It looks creamy and rich, but the taste is faintly off, a little too chalky, a little too sweet. The milk that came from the cow this morning was thin and bluish, so it has been improved for the discerning customer. It has been thickened with a bit of chalk or flour, perhaps a dash of molasses, to give it a richer color. And if the milkmaid is particularly ambitious in her deceptions, the rich, creamy texture might come from a more grotesque source, a small amount of emulsified sheep's brains, whisked into the pail to mimic the fat of real cream. You drink it down, unaware that you are consuming not just a lie, but a perfect breeding ground for disease, a cocktail of filth and fraud that could lay you low with a fever for a week. The promise of something fresh is often more of a threat than an assurance. Even your escape, a pint of beer at the end of a long day, is a gamble. The water in the city is notoriously unsafe, so beer is the healthier choice, its brewing process a form of purification. But the publican wants to give his brew a stronger kick, a more memorable bitterness, without paying for expensive hops or high-quality malt. So he adds his own special ingredients: a handful of grains of paradise for a peppery heat, a pinch of Cocculus indicus, a toxic berry known to stun fish, to create a cheap and potent intoxication, or perhaps even a whisper of something darker, a touch of strychnine, to provide a sharp, bitter finish that keeps the customers coming back. You drink the pint, and the resulting sickness is not the familiar fog of alcohol, but a sharp, nauseating poison, a chemical assault masquerading as good cheer. The next morning's hangover is the very least of your concerns. And when your body inevitably fails you, broken by the work, poisoned by the food, what then? Sickness is not seen as a biological process, but as a spiritual imbalance, a hostile takeover by malevolent forces. The cures, therefore, are not designed to heal the body, but to punish it, to drive the illness out through a campaign of sheer misery. The physician arrives, not with medicine, but with a theory. He speaks of your humors, of a surplus of blood or an excess of black bile. The prescription is always the same. You must be drained, purged, and emptied as if you were a blocked pipe. The cure is an ordeal, a violent attack on the very system it claims to be helping, and its success is often measured by a simple, brutal metric, whether or not you manage to survive the treatment. The physician, with his solemn face and bag of polished tools, sets to work. If you have a fever, it is because you have too much hot blood. The solution is simple. You must have less of it. He produces a small, sharp lancet and opens a vein in your arm, letting your life force drain into a brass bowl until you are pale and faint. Or perhaps he applies leeches, small, black, squirming things that attach to your skin and grow fat on your vitality. At the same time, he will give you a purgative, a foul-tasting concoction of herbs and minerals, designed to produce a violent, volcanic evacuation of your bowels. You are weakened from both ends, your body racked and exhausted, the theory being that no self-respecting illness would choose to remain in such an inhospitable environment. If the learned physician is beyond your means, you might turn to the local apothecary or the wise woman, whose remedies are based on a different, stranger kind of logic. Their shelves are lined with jars containing not just herbs, but things that crawl and things that have been dead for a very long time. For a persistent headache, they might offer you moss scraped from the skull of a man who died a violent death. For a wound that will not stop bleeding, the prescription is a pinch of mumia, a fine powder made from the ground-up remains of an ancient Egyptian mummy. You are given a potion of crushed woodlice to soothe your stomach, or a poultice made of fresh animal dung to draw out infection. It is a world of sympathetic magic, where the cure is sought in the grotesque, the forgotten, and the absurd. Ancient human remains, it seems, were considered the height of sustainable, multi-purpose recycling. And so, the body begins to keep its own grim accounting. It starts not with a dramatic collapse, but with a small, persistent cough. It begins as a guest, a polite tickle in your chest that you clear with a discreet bark. But this guest has no intention of leaving. It settles in, making itself at home deep within your lungs. Soon, it is no longer polite. It becomes a deep, rattling summons that shakes your entire frame, especially in the cold, damp hours before dawn. This is consumption. It is the slow, methodical dissolution of the self. You begin to sweat at night, soaking the thin straw mattress with a feverish dew. Your appetite fades, and your body, that once strong commodity, begins to shed its own value, pound by pound. You look in a sliver of polished metal and see a stranger with hollow cheeks and eyes that seem too large, burning with a feverish, unnatural light. It is a strangely poetic disease, they say, but there is no poetry in the taste of blood that now flecks your lips after a particularly violent coughing fit. The sound of your own lungs slowly turning to liquid. Or perhaps the affliction is not a slow siege, but a sudden, violent invasion. One day you are working, the next you are felled by a fire that rages behind your eyes. This is typhus, the jail fever, the ship fever, a pestilence born of filth and carried on the backs of the lice that are your constant, tiny companions. The world dissolves into a hallucinatory soup. You shiver uncontrollably, even as your skin burns to the touch. A strange, blotchy rash appears across your chest and back, a faint constellation of red stars mapping the poison that floods your system. You mutter nonsense to figures who are not there, your mind a storm-tossed vessel lost in a sea of fever. There is no gentle decline here, only a brutal, swift battle fought in the sweat-soaked darkness of your bunk. Your neighbors give you a wide berth, their fear a palpable thing. For this is a fire that can easily jump from one dry soul to the next in the close, cramped quarters of the poor. You are no longer a worker. You are a contagion, a biological hazard whose only value lies in how quickly you can be isolated. Then there is the most feared of all, the speckled monster. Smallpox does not creep or invade. It announces its arrival with authority. It begins with a high fever and an ache so deep in your bones it feels as if your skeleton is trying to break free. Then, after a few days of this torment, the fever breaks and you are granted a brief, treacherous moment of relief. You think you are saved. But this is merely the calm before the true storm. The rash begins, first as small red spots on your face and hands, then spreading everywhere. The spots become bumps, and the bumps fill with a thick, opaque fluid, transforming into hard, painful pustules that cover every inch of your skin. You are a grotesque parody of yourself, your features lost beneath a mask of weeping sores. The smell of the infection is a sweet, sickening cloud that hangs around you. If you survive, and only 2 out of 3 will, you are left a ghost of your former self, your skin a pitted, scarred landscape, a permanent testament to your ordeal. You are marked for life, a walking reminder of the monster's visit. In this world, sickness is the baseline, and health is the fleeting, precious exception. The most common ailment is the one that comes from your own plate, the dull, twisting cramp in your gut that signals another betrayal by your food. The summer complaint, they call it, a polite term for the violent purges that leave you weak and dehydrated, a consequence of spoiled meat or tainted water. It is so common that it is barely remarked upon, a seasonal nuisance like flies or mud. You learn the grim hierarchy of stomach pains, from the mild discomfort of chalk-laden bread to the gut-wrenching agony of pork that is turned. You become a reluctant connoisseur of your own internal misery, an expert in the subtle notes and variations of food-borne illness. It is a constant, grinding war of attrition fought in your own intestines, a battle you can only hope to draw, never truly win. When the body's small rebellions become a full-blown civil war, you must seek help. But where do you turn? The choice is a stark one, a journey into a landscape of desperation and bizarre belief. You might find your way to a hospital, though that is a word that inspires more fear than hope. It is not a place where one goes to be healed. It is a place where one goes to die, a human warehouse for the indigent and the incurable. The very air at the entrance is a warning, a thick, institutional miasma of stale urine, boiled cabbage, unwashed linen, and the faint, sweet odor of decay. It is the smell of mass-produced misery, a scent that clings to the stones and seeps into the soul. To enter these doors is to admit a final defeat, to surrender your body to a system that sees it not as a person to be saved, but as a specimen to be observed in its final, fascinating stages of collapse. Your day in the hospital begins before the sun. You are woken by a rough shake from a woman whose face is a permanent mask of weary indifference. She is not a nurse in any modern sense. She is a warden, a custodian of the dying. The first sound of the morning is not a cheerful greeting, but a low groan that ripples through the long, cavernous ward, a chorus of pain from the dozens of straw pallets lining the walls. The air is frigid, and your one thin gray blanket, which you suspect has been used by a long line of previous occupants, offers little comfort. The high, grimy windows let in a weak, reluctant light that illuminates the dust motes dancing in the air, each one a potential vessel for some new infection. The first task of the day is a simple one, to see who did not survive the night. The warden moves down the line, her footsteps heavy on the stone floor. She peers at each pallet. If a man is still and silent, she gives him a sharp prod with her foot. If there is no response, she calls for the orderlies. There is no ceremony here. The body is unceremoniously wrapped in its own filthy blanket, lifted from the pallet, and carried out, its departure barely noticed by the living who remain. The empty space it leaves is a small, chilling vacuum in the ward, a stark reminder of the institution's primary function. It is a space that will be filled by nightfall, the turnover rate here being remarkably, terrifyingly efficient. You watch the proceedings with a detached calm, the constant proximity to death having eroded any capacity for shock. Breakfast arrives on a rattling wooden cart. It is a single, unvarying menu, a bowl of thin, watery gruel, gray and glutinous, with a faint, sour taste. It is served in a chipped wooden bowl with a wooden spoon. There is also a chunk of stale, dark bread. This is not a meal designed to nourish or to comfort. It is the bare minimum of fuel required to keep the body's sputtering engine from stalling completely. You eat it slowly, mechanically, the act of swallowing a chore. The sounds of the ward are a symphony of slurping, coughing, and the scrape of spoons against wood. You can hear the man in the next pallet, the one with the fever, trying to sip his gruel, his hands shaking so violently that most of it spills down his front. No one helps him. After the meager breakfast comes the main event of the morning, the physician's rounds. He is a man of great importance, dressed in a fine black coat that seems out of place in this sea of grime. He does not walk, he sweeps through the ward, a small flock of eager, pale-faced students trailing in his wake like pilotfish. He is not here to offer comfort. He is here to teach. You are not a patient, you are a lesson plan, a living textbook of pathology. He stops at a pallet, perhaps yours, and begins to lecture in a low, droning monotone, pointing out your symptoms with the tip of a silver-topped cane. Note the characteristic pallor of the skin, he might say, and the distinct, rattling sound of the breath, indicative of an excess of phlegm in the lungs. You lie there, a piece of breathing evidence, as he discusses your impending demise in a language you do not understand. The treatments, when they are prescribed, are a form of ritualized torture. The physician believes your illness is a matter of imbalance, a system clogged with bad humors. The solution, therefore, in a stunning display of hydraulic logic, is to drain the system. If you are strong enough to survive it, you will be bled. An orderly will come with a small, sharp knife and a bowl. He will tie a strip of leather around your arm, find a vein, and make a quick, stinging cut. You watch your own blood, dark and sluggish, trickle into the bowl. You are meant to lose a pint, sometimes more, until you feel lightheaded and weak. The theory is that this removes the, quote, the bad blood, though the practical effect is to weaken you further, making you an even more inviting home for whatever ailment has taken root. It is like trying to put out a fire by removing the furniture, piece by piece. If bleeding is not on the agenda, then purging certainly is. You will be given a cup of something dark and impossibly bitter, a concoction designed to produce a swift and volcanic reaction from your bowels. The effects are immediate and violent, leaving you weak, empty, and trembling on your pallet. The goal is to expel the sickness, to drive it from your body through sheer force. The experience is one of profound indignity, a total loss of control in a place that has already stripped you of everything else. You lie in the filth and the stench, your body a battlefield, where the cure is often more brutal than the disease itself. The physician will return later, inspect the results with academic interest, and perhaps prescribe another dose. The long afternoon stretches into an eternity. There is nothing to do but lie on your pallet and listen. The ward is a library of human suffering, and every sound is a story. You hear the endless wet cough of the man with consumption. You hear the delirious, high-pitched muttering of the woman with typhus, arguing with ghosts. You hear the low, constant moans of the man whose leg is turning black with gangrene, the sweet, rotten smell of his flesh, a constant presence in the air. You hear the soft, desperate whimpering of a young boy in the corner, crying for a mother who will never come. The only other sound is the slow, rhythmic drip of water from a leak in the ceiling, each drop a tiny, merciless tick of a clock counting down the hours of your life. Sometimes the monotony is broken by a moment of high drama. Today it is the man with the gangrenous leg. The surgeon arrives. Unlike the physician, he is not a man of theory. He is a craftsman, a butcher with a title. He is dressed in a leather apron, already stained with the brown and red of his trade. He brings no anesthetic, for that is a luxury not yet imagined. He brings a bottle of whiskey, a leather strap, and a set of terrifyingly sharp saws and knives. The orderlies hold the man down. The surgeon offers him the whiskey, which he downs in one desperate gulp. The leather strap is placed between his teeth for him to bite down on. And then the work begins. You try not to watch, but you cannot look away. The sound is what you will remember most. It is not the man's scream, though that is a terrible, ragged sound that seems to tear the air in two. It is the sound of the saw on the bone. It is a wet, grating, rhythmic noise, a sound of methodical destruction. It goes on, accompanied by the surgeon's grunts of effort. The smell of fresh blood, coppery and thick, fills the ward, overpowering even the stench of sickness. When the severed leg is finally dropped into a bucket with a sickening thud, the ordeal is not over. The surgeon then takes a red-hot cauterizing iron from a brazier of coals and presses it to the stump. The hiss of cooking flesh and the renewed, agonized shriek of the patient are the finale to this gruesome piece of theater. The surgeon wipes his tools on his apron, gives a satisfied nod, and leaves. The man is left to either die of shock and infection or to live as half of what he was. As evening approaches, the light from the high windows begins to fail, turning from gray to a deep, bruised purple. The warden makes her rounds again, this time with a lantern. She brings the evening meal, which is identical to the morning meal. More gruel, more stale bread. For those too weak to eat, she makes no effort to help. The food is left on the floor beside the pallet, an offering to the rats that will come out after dark. A quiet sense of dread begins to settle over the ward. The night is the most dangerous time. It is when the fevers spike, when the breathing becomes shallow, when the body's fragile defenses finally give way. To fall asleep is to risk not waking up. The lanterns are extinguished, plunging the ward into a near-total darkness, broken only by a sliver of moonlight from a high window. The sounds of the day, the groans, the coughs, the weeping, seem to grow louder, more intimate in the dark. You can hear the rustle of the rats, bold now, as they scurry across the floor. You hear the man who lost his leg, his whimpers now soft and broken. You lie on your back, staring up at the invisible ceiling, your body aching, your stomach empty. You are acutely aware of your own breathing, a small, fragile rhythm in the vast, sick silence. You listen to the breathing of the men around you, trying to gauge who is still fighting, who is fading. Sometime in the deepest part of the night, you hear it. The sound you have been dreading. It is a sudden, sharp intake of breath from a nearby pallet, followed by a long, slow, rattling exhalation that seems to go on forever. And then, silence. A profound and absolute silence where a moment before there had been the struggle for life. The man in that pallet is gone. No one comes. No one marks the moment. his death is just a small, quiet subtraction from the ward's total. He will be found in the morning, another empty space to be filled. You close your eyes, pulling the thin, foul blanket up to your chin, and you pray. You do not pray for healing or for rescue. You pray only that the rattling breath you hear next will not be your own. And should you be one of the few to walk out of the hospital's doors, you are not the same. You are a ghost, hollowed out by the experience. But even for those who never enter, the final consequence is the same. Death is not a private, dignified affair. It is a public health problem. When your time is done, your body becomes one last piece of refuse to be cleared away. If you have no family, no money, no one to claim you, you are destined for the potter's field. Your body is loaded onto a cart with others, a tangle of anonymous limbs, and trundled out of the city to a patch of unconsecrated ground. There are no headstones here, no quiet reflection. There is only a great, open pit, a communal grave that is never allowed to be filled. You are tipped in, covered with a thin layer of quicklime and dirt, and forgotten. Your life, which began as an item of commerce, ends as a piece of municipal waste, your ultimate value calculated in the cost of your disposal. You have survived the mechanics of labor, the slow poisoning of your food, and the brutal theater of medicine. But to navigate the world outside the workshop or the hospital ward is to enter a different kind of labyrinth, one built not of stone or brick, but of 1,000 invisible, unyielding rules. This society is governed by a dense web of superstition and fear, a code of conduct that is never spoken aloud but is enforced with the swift, unforgiving judgment of the crowd. You learn to never compliment a newborn baby too effusively, lest your praise be mistaken for the evil eye, a curse of envy that could cause the child to sicken and die. You learn to spit quietly onto your own chest if you hear something you fear, a small, grubby ritual to ward off ill fortune. These are not quaint beliefs. They are the operating system of the world, and a system crash can be fatal. You find the heart of this social world in the tavern, a place that is both a sanctuary and a minefield. You push open the heavy oak door and are immediately assaulted by a wall of noise and heat. The air is a thick, brown soup of cheap pipe smoke, spilled ale, roasting meat, and the dense, animal smell of dozens of unwashed men packed into a low-ceilinged room. Here, gossip is the true currency, traded more eagerly than coin. You listen to the low murmur of conversations, the arguments over dice, the occasional burst of a bawdy song. News travels fast here, distorted and amplified with each retelling. A man reads from a smudged, poorly printed broadsheet, his voice slurring, as he details a two-headed calf born in a neighboring county, a surefire omen of some impending doom. You learn to sit quietly in a corner, to make yourself small, to listen to the rhythms of the room, for a careless word or an accidental glance at the wrong man's wife could end with you being thrown into the muddy street, or worse. Public life is a performance, and the stage is often the market square. Here, justice is not a private matter, but a form of popular entertainment. You see a man and a woman locked into the pillory, their heads and hands trapped in the heavy wooden frame. Their crime was selling watered-down ale, a sin against both commerce and good cheer. The crowd, your neighbors and fellow workers, treats the event with the glee of a holiday. They have come with ammunition, rotten fruit, clumps of mud, the reeking entrails of a fish from a nearby stall. You watch as a small boy, urged on by his laughing father, lands a well-aimed cabbage core on the woman's cheek. The couple endures the assault in silence, their face is a mask of humiliation. This is not just punishment, it is a lesson for all who watch. It is a reminder of the fragility of your own standing, of how quickly you can be transformed from a face in the crowd to the focus of its contempt. A marriage, you discover, is less a union of hearts and more a public merger of assets, announced with all the subtlety of a livestock auction. For 3 consecutive Sundays, the priest reads the banns from the pulpit, a formal declaration of the impending contract between 2 families, giving anyone in the parish a chance to air their objections. On the wedding day, the bride is not dressed in virginal white, but in her finest colored dress, a practical garment that can be worn again. The ceremony is a swift, public affair, but the true ritual begins afterward. The entire village descends upon the couple's home in a chaotic, drunken festival. They bang pots and pans, sing obscene songs, and demand to be let in for a share of the wedding feast, a raucous tradition to bless the union and, more practically, to get a free meal and all the ale they can drink. It is a celebration so aggressive it feels more like a friendly home invasion. The wedding night itself is a communal affair, a shocking violation of what you might consider privacy. The bride is ceremonially put to bed by her maids, and the groom by his friends, a process accompanied by an endless stream of crude jokes and advice. The entire drunken party might even crowd into the bedchamber to witness the couple getting into bed together, a final, public confirmation of the marriage's consummation. This is not about romance. It is about community oversight, ensuring the production of future heirs. You hear of the charivari, a brutal public mockery reserved for unpopular matches, an old man marrying a young girl, for instance. The villagers will surround the house for nights on end, creating a hellish symphony of noise, with horns, bells, and shrieks, a form of collective, violent disapproval that can drive a couple from the village entirely. Social harmony is maintained through a delicate balance of enforced celebration and ritualized harassment. Death, like marriage, is a profoundly public and superstitious event. When a person dies in their home, a whole new set of rules clicks into place. The clocks are stopped at the hour of death. The mirrors are covered with black cloth, lest the soul of the deceased become trapped in the reflection. The body is washed and laid out on a table in the main room of the house, and the windows are thrown open, regardless of the weather, to allow the spirit a clear path to the afterlife. The wake is a long, sleepless vigil, fueled by alcohol and a deep-seated fear that if the body is left unattended, evil spirits might try to occupy it. The house fills with neighbors who come not only to pay their respects, but to watch, to gossip, and to ensure that all the proper rituals are being observed with absolute precision. The most bizarre of these rituals is reserved for those who died with a heavy burden of sin. You hear whispers of the Sin Eater, a wretched outcast who performs a terrifying and necessary service. For a small fee, this person is summoned to the house of the dead. A piece of bread and a bowl of ale are placed on the chest of the corpse. The Sin Eater, in a solemn and silent ritual, consumes the bread and drinks the ale, and in doing so is believed to absorb all the sins of the deceased, freeing their soul for its journey to heaven. The living family is cleansed of spiritual debt, while the Sin Eater, a sort of spiritual sanitation worker, becomes a walking vessel of all the community's transgressions, shunned and feared by the very people who depend on his service. You see him sometimes on the edge of town, a man whose eyes carry the weight of 100 other men's lives, and you wonder at the terrible, beautiful absurdity of it all. Once a year, the crushing weight of work and fear is briefly lifted in a surge of collective madness. The May Day festival is a riot of green leaves, bright ribbons, and unrestrained drunkenness. A great pole is erected in the village square, and you watch as people dance around it, weaving intricate patterns with colored streamers, a pagan ritual that the church tolerates with a weary sigh. Social hierarchies dissolve in a flood of ale. The baker dances with the blacksmith's wife, and the stable boy chases the daughters of the gentry through the streets. There are games, wrestling matches, and archery contests. The air is filled with the sound of laughter, music from a fiddle and pipe, and the occasional crash as a drunken brawl breaks out. For one day, the world is turned upside down. It is a necessary release, a safety valve for a society under immense pressure, a brief, chaotic reminder that even in a life of endless toil, there is still room for a moment of wild, senseless joy. But fear is never far away, and it is a commodity as valuable as any other. You see a man selling pamphlets in the market, his voice a conspiratorial hiss. He tells tales of the resurrection men, the body snatchers who haunt the city's graveyards by night. A pamphlet from just last year, he cries, waving a flimsy sheet of paper, tells of the men who dig up the newly buried to sell them to the surgeons for dissection. No one is safe, not even in the grave, the crowd murmurs, a thrill of horror passing through them. The stories are not entirely false. The anatomists at the medical schools have a near insatiable demand for fresh corpses, and a desperate man with a shovel can earn more in one night of grave robbing than in a month of honest labor. The fear is so real that the wealthy buy iron cages, mort safes, to place over the graves of their loved ones, protecting their eternal rest with a final, grim piece of security hardware. You exist within this world as a perpetual outsider, a silent observer of its strange and violent ballet. The taboos that govern others bind you even tighter, for any misstep on your part will be judged not as a personal failing, but as a confirmation of your inherent flaw, a defect in the product. You learn the superstitions not because you believe in them, but because to ignore them is to make yourself a target. You attend the festivals but remain on the edge of the dancing, your joy muted by the constant awareness of your precarious status. You listen to the rumors and the ghost stories, and you understand that the most terrifying monster in this world is not a ghoul that haunts a graveyard, but the judgment of the crowd. Your survival depends on a kind of social invisibility, on mastering the steps to a dance you were never invited to join. And yet, this world, so solid and so absolute in its brutality, could not last forever. Change does not arrive like a conquering army with banners and trumpets. It begins as a whisper in a crowded tavern, a question murmured in the dark of the barracks. It starts when the pamphlet being sold in the square is not about a monstrous birth, but about the rights of a man to the work of his own hands. It takes root when a small group of weavers, their lungs thick with cotton dust, decide they will not enter the factory gates one morning. This is not a revolution, not yet. It is something much smaller and perhaps more powerful, a slow, dawning, and deeply dangerous realization. It is the quiet, collective thought that the way things are is not the only way they can ever be. The world you have witnessed is a great, grinding machine, but even the strongest machine begins to show cracks, tiny fissures of dissent that will, over the course of generations, bring the entire edifice shuddering to the ground. These cracks spread into the most intimate parts of life. That loaf of bread, whitened with chalk, becomes the subject of a furious pamphlet, then a riot, then finally, a law. Men with no connection to baking, men who write in ledgers and speak in courtrooms, begin to argue that a baker's profit should not be made from the slow poisoning of his customers. The idea is absurd, revolutionary. It leads to the creation of inspectors, officials who can enter a bakehouse and test the flour, who can confiscate a barrel of milk that has been thickened with sheep's brains. If you can open your refrigerator today, confident that the milk inside is only milk, that the meat is not painted with old blood, if you can bite into a loaf of bread without tasting plaster, it is because somewhere in this fog of the past, a line was finally drawn between commerce and contamination. They fought, in their own small, desperate way, for your right to a meal that will not betray you. The relentless clock of the factory, the endless darkness of the mine, also begins to lose its absolute power. The argument, at first, is a simple one, that a day should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, that is not simply a collapse into unconsciousness. The notion of an 8-hour day is treated as a fantasy, a dangerous delusion that would ruin industry. The idea of a day of rest, a Sunday without the roar of the looms or the clang of the hammer, is seen as an invitation to sloth and sin. Yet the idea persists. It is fought for in bloody clashes with guards and in quiet, stubborn strikes that starve families. It is an argument that insists that a human life is more than a measurement of productivity. The weekend, that simple, sacred space in your modern calendar, was not given. It was purchased with the suffering and the sacrifice of the people you have walked beside. A small, hard-won island of time reclaimed from the hungry sea of labor. The hospital, that great and terrible theater of death, also begins its slow, reluctant transformation. A strange new theory begins to circulate, whispered by radical physicians. They speak of creatures too small to be seen, tiny monsters that live on the skin, in the water, and in the air itself, and that these invisible things, not an imbalance of humors, are the true cause of sickness. The surgeon who once wiped his bloody hands on his apron is now urged to wash them, a seemingly pointless ritual that is met with scorn. But the results cannot be denied. Patients who are treated with clean hands and sterilized tools mysteriously stop dying of infection. The ward, once a place of communal decay, is slowly, painstakingly scrubbed into a place of sanitation. The quiet confidence with which you accept a sterile bandage or a clean needle is the legacy of this colossal shift, a testament to a world learning, at last, to fight the monsters it could not even see. And what of the wooden tag, the one that was tied to your wrist in the cold, gray dawn of the market? That, too, begins to fray. The most profound change of all is the one that dismantles the very premise of that auction block. It is the slow, agonizing, and often violent conclusion that a person cannot be a product. The arguments are made in parliaments and fought on battlefields. They are assertions that the fine print on a sales tag cannot possibly contain the value of a human soul. The guarantee against hidden flaws is replaced by a radical new guarantee, the right to be flawed, to be free, to be inconvenient. The abolition of that market is not just a change in law, it is a fundamental rewiring of the world's moral imagination. It is the final, thunderous declaration that there is no return policy on a human being, because they were never for sale in the first place. This is the true legacy of the world you have visited. It is not just in the laws that protect you or the science that heals you. It is in the assumptions you are allowed to make every single day. The assumption that your work has limits. The assumption that your food is safe. The assumption that your body is your own, not an asset to be appraised and sold. These were not assumptions in the world of the past. They were radical, dangerous dreams. The ghosts of the mine, the factory, and the pillory are not gone. They are simply quiet. They are the silent, unseen architects of your peace. Their suffering was the raw material from which your safety was forged. Their fears laid the foundation for your freedoms. The world they inhabited has not vanished. It has been paved over, layer by layer, with rights, with knowledge, and with the simple revolutionary expectation of a better tomorrow. And so, we leave them there, in the dust and the noise, in the flickering lamplight of a world that is fading into memory. The sounds of the auctioneer's drone, the factory's roar, the surgeon's saw, let them soften now, receding into the deep, quiet distance. Feel the solid ground of your own time beneath you. The air you are breathing is clean. The silence around you is a luxury they could never have imagined. As you drift now into the gentle darkness of your own sleep, in a room that is warm and safe, remember that the quiet hum of the world around you is a hymn of progress, a song whose lyrics were written in the sweat and the struggle of those who came before. Your rest is their legacy. Your peace is their memorial. Let their world dissolve into the soft fabric of your dreams, and sleep now, sleep.